Hi, everybody. This is the Great Christmas Read from the Swanton Public Library. My name is Becky Roop, and I'm here with, all right, do you want to tell your names to the camera? Go, one at a time.
Kennedy.
Kennedy.
Lucas.
Lucas.
Emma.
Emma.
Elle.
And Becky. Okay, so today we are going to read from the Tall Book of Christmas, Giant Grummer's Christmas. There's the giant.
Why are Grummers?
I think it's just his last name, but it sounds like sort of someone big and grumbly. Grummer. Grummer. I mean, you wouldn't name a little fairy Grummer, right? No, it's a giant's name. Giant Grummer was a very bad giant. He never kept Christmas. Sometimes on Christmas Day, he would sit all day in his huge castle, eating pickles and drinking vinegar.
That's it?
That's it.
Sounds sweet.
Christmas was a very sour day for Giant Grummer. Just to think of so many people being happy gave him a headache. He was a very bad giant. Giant Grummer lived in a castle made of Limburger cheese.
Cheese?
Do any of you know what Limburger cheese is?
No. Good cheese?
It is the smelliest, most disgusting cheese you can imagine.
That's what it have warts on it?
Now, Limburger cheese smells the strongest of all cheeses. No one in the village could come within a mile of the castle without being overcome. But Giant Grummer loved Limburger cheese. He loved it so much that he kept eating away great chunks of the castle towers and walls. One Christmas, Giant Grummer was worse than he had ever been before. He said that he was going over to the village on Christmas Eve after Santa Claus had been there and reach his long arm down every chimney. He said he was going to grab all the stockings around the fireplaces with all of the presents in them. And then he was going to carry them over to his castle, spread them out on the floor, and stamp on them until they were all broken into pieces. How low is that? The villagers were terribly worried when they heard this. But what should they do? Now, do you have an idea what to do?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Seal up the chimneys with duct tape. No, they could wake up.
They could wake up?
But they don't know.
I like the duct tape. Seal up the chimneys with duct tape solution.
A lot.
A lot of duct tape.
Like until you go to the fireplace.
Of course, if you had a fire burning, that would be tough. Well, there was a prince in the village, and his name was Topsy-Turvy. He was only a little boy, but he was not at all afraid of the giant, nor of his castle made of Limburger cheese. Because Topsy had found out that if he turned his nose upside down, everything smelt just the opposite from what it usually did. So perfume smelled like fishy castor oil.
So what if I turn my nose upside down and smell the candy canes?
They'd be dreadful. And Limburger cheese with your nose upside down smelled like cookies and gingerbread. When Topsy heard that Giant Grummer was planning to steal all of the children's Christmas presents, he went right to the telephone and called up Santa Claus, and they had a long talk together and made a wonderful plan. What do you suppose Santa Claus's telephone number is? 1-800 North Pole?
No.
What?
That's Santa.
Santa.
Yep, Santa. That's it.
I wouldn't be surprised. Now, Giant Grummer had never hung up his stocking at Christmas, not even when he was a little giant boy. His mother had told him that she didn't believe in Santa Claus. But the fact was that Santa Claus knew that the smell of Limburger Castle would make all his reindeer deathly sick. So he never tried to go there. First of all, then, Giant Grummer received a very nice letter from Santa Claus. It said, "Dear Giant Grummer, why don't you hang up your stocking on Christmas Eve? I have some very nice presents which I would like to put into it. and this would be much more fun than stealing the children's presents and breaking them into smithereens. Your good friend, Santa Claus. Said Giant Grummer. I'll fool Santa Claus. I'll hang up my biggest stocking and I'll watch him fill it. Then I'll dump the presents all on the floor, and I'll still have time to go over to the village and snatch all of the children's presents. And he rubbed his hands and he stamped his feet. Giant Grummer was a very bad giant. So on Christmas Eve, Giant Grummer came into the big living room of the castle and hung up his great big stocking in front of the fireplace. Then he went to bed and lay very still. He tried to stay awake and watch for Santa Claus. Did you guys ever try to do that? Stay awake?
No.
No?
Yeah. I would get too tired.
Yeah, it's true. And you don't want to be exhausted for Christmas. But the first thing you knew, just like you guys, he was fast asleep and he never saw Santa Claus at all. At midnight, Prince Topsy-Turvy met Santa Claus in the village. But how will we ever dare to drive to Limburger Castle? Asked Santa Claus. No problem, Topsy answered. And then he turned Santa Claus's nose upside down. And then they both turned around the noses of all 8 reindeer. Topsy jumped into the sleigh with Santa Claus and they started for the castle of Giant Grummer. Faster and faster they went, because now Limburger Castle, to the upside-down reindeer, smelled like cookies and gingerbread, and all the reindeer were very fond of cookies and gingerbread. On they went, right up onto the roof of the castle, and down the chimney went Santa Claus. When Santa Claus saw the huge stocking, he drew a long breath, but at once he began to try to fill it. Look at this. There's Santa Claus, and there's Giant Grummer's enormous stocking.
It's just a sock.
Stocking. Well, stocking is really another word for sock. An old-fashioned word for sock.
I need help filling this bag.
You can't peel the rest of that candy cane? Give me a second. Let's finish Giant Grummer and then we'll attack that candy cane. Okay, first he put in a real automobile. And then he put in a huge tin horn, and then a whole lot of candy and cookies and gingerbread. And then last of all, Santa Claus pulled out of his pack a great many huge round cheeses. They were the very oldest and strongest smelling Limburger cheese. They were just awful. Santa Claus put these big cheeses on top of the stocking, and then he went up the chimney and drove away. Soon it was morning. Before daylight, Giant Grummer came trooping into the room to look at his stocking. And as soon as he found the big cheeses, he didn't look for anything else. He just sat down on the floor and began to eat them. He ate up 2 whole cheeses, but when he tried to eat the third, he could not go on. He was just too full. His eyes began to close, and soon he was fast asleep. Giant Grummer slept all through Christmas morning, and Christmas afternoon, and Christmas evening. And that is the reason why Giant Grummer was good all day on Christmas. He was asleep. The end. Okay, who needs candy cane help?
Me. Mine has to be.
Hi, I'm Virginia Holloman, and I'm going to read a Christmas book for a great Christmas read at the Swanton Library. This one is called Night Tree by Eve Bunting. It's an older book, but it's quite wonderful. On the night before Christmas, we always go to find our tree. We bundle up so we're warm. Nina's always wearing her boots that are too big for her. She's been wearing them all day. Dad sets our box in the back of the truck with the rest of his stuff, and the 4 of us squish into the front seat. We drive through the bright Christmas streets to where the dark and the quiet begins. Nina is almost asleep. in Mom's lap when we stop. Are we there, I ask? And Dad says yes, and rolls down the window so we can smell that wonderful tree smell. We scramble out. There are oaks growing here, and alder and maples that are bare now and white in the moonshine, and then the pines and the spruces and the firs, and they're still green. This is called Luke's Forest, but Dad says it's not really a forest, just a nice forgotten place where our town ends. Dad goes first on the path between the trees, carrying our box and the big red lantern. Mom and Nina go next, holding hands. I come last with the big blanket. Here's our tree, Dad says. It has been our tree forever and ever. We walk around it, touching it. It's grown since last year, I said. Mom puts her hand on my shoulder. So have you. So have I, Nina says. Nina hates to be left out. An owl hoots deep in the darkness. Ooh, there are secrets all around us in the woods. Can I put on the popcorn chain, Nina asks, and she hops up and down so much she hops right out of her boots. Mom helps her get it back on. Nina takes one end of the chain and I take the other, and we wind it around our tree. We've brought apples and tangerines with strings on them, and we hang them from the branches. It's hard to hang string loops when you have gloves on, but it's too cold to take them off. Decorating the tree. For weeks we've been making balls of sunflower seeds and pressed millet and honey. We hang those too. We scatter shelled nuts and breadcrumbs and pieces of apple underneath for the little creatures who can't climb very well. Our tree looks so pretty. Mom says I should spread the blanket so we can sit and admire our tree now. She has brought a thermos of hot chocolate. I take off my gloves and toast my hands around my warm cup. Dad turns off the lantern and we stay quiet, hoping some of the little animals will come while we're here, hoping the deer will come, but they don't. They're shy, Dad says. I'm shy too, Nina says. Before we leave, she and I get to choose a Christmas carol to sing. I choose "O Come All Ye Faithful." Nina chooses "Old MacDonald Had a Farm." That's not a Christmas song, silly, I tell her. But Mom says it's fine, and a very nice song, too. We sing fast because there are lots of verses, and it's getting much colder. After the last E-I-E-I-O, we gather up our things and head for the truck. I look back once. Our tree has folded itself into the darkness, but I think I can still see it. Stars caught in its branches and the moon swinging lopsided on top. Nina gets tired and Dad has to wrap her in the blanket and carry her. I carry her boots for her. Later, in bed, I think about our tree, and sometimes the next day when the aunts and the uncles and the cousins are all at our house and it's noisy and happy, I let my mind go back to Luke's forest. I think of the birds having Christmas dinner, and the squirrels and the possums and the raccoons and the skunks. There might even be a bear. Because Dad says bears don't really sleep all winter, and if one's going to wake up, I just bet it would wake up for Christmas. Maybe a fox has come, stepping high in its thin, sharp paws, and they're all there together, all of them, singing their own Christmas songs on Christmas Day, all of them around our tree. That's the end of that story. Such a peaceful one.
I'm Liza Comiskey, and this is the Great Christmas Read from the Swanton Public Library. And I am going to be reading, you can turn around, my friend, If You Take a Mouse to the Movies. I bet you've never heard this book before.
I think I have. I think I have.
You think you
read
have?
it to me before?
I have read it to you before, yes. If you
So
take
funny.
a mouse to the movies,
We need to buy some popcorn.
he'll ask you for some popcorn. And when you give him the popcorn, he'll want to string it all together. And then he'll want to hang it on the Christmas tree. You'll have to buy him one. And on the way home, he'll see,
A snowman.
that's right, a snowman in your neighborhood. And he'll want to make one of his own. And then he'll need a carrot for its nose. And when he's all finished, he'll decide to build a fort. And then he'll ask you to help him. Then he'll want to make snowballs and have a snowball fight. Playing outside will make him cold, so he'll want to go inside and curl up on the couch. See his pants drying up here on the light? And then he'll ask you for a blanket. Once he's nice and cozy, he'll want to listen to some Christmas carols. So you'll have to find some on the radio. He'll probably want to sing along. And the carols will remind him of his Christmas tree. So he's gonna want to make some ornaments. You're gonna have to get the paper and the glue. And of course, my favorite is he's gonna ask you for some glitter. Oh boy. And when the ornaments are done, look at that. There's glitter everywhere. He'll want to hang them up. So he'll stand back and look at the tree once he's all done. And then he's going to notice something is missing. What do you think it is?
The star. The star.
You think it's the star?
The love star's on.
How did this whole book begin?
But then more in the movies.
He'll notice his popcorn string is missing. To me, it looks like that tree can't hold anymore.
Uh-huh.
So he's going to want to make another one. So then he's going to ask you for some popcorn. And chances are, when you give him the popcorn, what's he going to want?
To go to the movies? A shrine.
He'll want you to take him to the movies. And then it's going to start all over again.
Again.
The end. Thank you guys for listening and eating cookies and candy canes.
I don't really cookies.